Hello everyone, my name is H2Acon, and today I'm here with the third episode in our new series, Character Case Files. Now, although not all games are based around real events, like Assassin's Creed, that doesn't mean that the characters' stories are any less impressive or meaningful. This series will hopefully allow me to share with you all the backstories of the great fictional characters in gaming. In future I may branch out to covering characters from other franchises, however for now I'm mostly going to be focusing on characters from the Halo universe. So far in the series we've looked at John 117, the hero of the original trilogy, and Catherine Halsey, the brains behind the Spartan-I program. In this episode we're going to be looking at one of the most beloved Halo characters. He kicks alien ass and always has a witty comment to go with it. Let's take a look at Sergeant Avery J. Johnson. Johnson was born sometime prior to 2584 on Earth. Since the J in his name stands for Junior, it can be assumed that his father also went by the name of Avery Johnson. The identity of his mother, however, is unknown. It appears that his parents did not get along though, as they split when he was only 6 years old. His father left, leaving his mother seriously depressed and unable to care for young Avery. He was taken into the care of his aunt Marcille, who raised him to adulthood. The two lived in an apartment on Blackstone Avenue in the city of Chicago, where his aunt regularly took him to church and raised him as an evangelical promesic. His religious beliefs remained with him for much of his life. At the age of 19, Johnson left his aunt and enlisted in the UNSC Marine Corps. It seems that he showed particular proficiency as a sniper, graduating from the Naval Special Warfare Sniper School and carrying out at least one assassination, that being of Gerald Mulkey Ander, the leader of the Secessionist Union in 2502. At some point in the early 2500s, Johnson joined the Orion Project, which had begun in 2491 and provided the basis for the Spartan projects that followed it. It involved taking Special Forces personnel and giving them biochemical augmentations to improve strength, reaction speeds, and generally just make them more lethal. Coupled with advanced new training techniques, the augmentations gave the Orion soldiers an edge over their insurrectionist opponents, and enabled them to become the most successful Spec Ops unit of their day. Following its deactivation in 2506, the Orion personnel were all reassigned to other units. For Johnson, this meant a return to the Marines. Most of his story during the early decades of the 2500s is unknown, as the missions he served in were highly classified, and so any and all information on these is heavily redacted. It can be assumed, however, that Johnson continued carrying out Black Ops missions against the insurrectionists while serving within the Marines. One mission we do know about took place in 2424. Johnson was on the Colony World Tribute in the Epsilon Eridana system as part of the UNSC's Operation Trebuchet, a massive anti-insurrectionist campaign. On June 16th, Johnson and two squads of Marines cornered a female insurrectionist in a diner. She was able to take a child hostage, and due to Johnson's unwillingness to take a shot where he might have hit the boy, the rebel detonated a bomb in her purse when the boy's father attempted to tackle her. 3 Marines and 38 civilians were killed in the subsequent explosion, as a direct result of Johnson's inaction. Following this incident, Johnson was given 2 weeks' leave, and he went back to Earth to visit his aunt. Already seriously depressed after the events on Tribute, finding out that his aunt had died in his absence pushed him over the edge. Johnson spent the next 3 days on a massive drinking binge, and was found by a UNSC officer after a night spent sleeping in the gutter following a brawl with a trio of strip club bouncers. Shortly afterwards, Johnson was reassigned to the Colony World Harvest to assist in the training of the local colonial militia. The newly formed militia's other instructor turned out to be Staff Sergeant Nolan Byrne, the other squad leader from the incident on Tribute. Byrne had lost his entire squad and nearly been killed by the blast, so it is unsurprising that he treated Johnson with considerable animosity. Upon running into one another for the first time in the barracks, Byrne attacked Johnson, and the two had to be separated from each other by the militia captain, the one-armed Captain Ponder, at gunpoint. Luckily for the health of both sergeants, Ponder was able to convince the two to put aside their hostility. It later transpired that their assignment as militia instructors was merely a cover to get the 2 Special Forces Marines to Harvest. Ships had begun to go missing in the sector, and only suspected insurrectionist pirates for their disappearances. They sent Lieutenant Commander Gillan Al Signy to investigate, with Johnson and Byrne drafted in to provide the muscle if she managed to uncover anything. This proved to be a sensible precaution, as the pirates responsible turned out to be a Covenant missionary vessel crewed by Kigyar. On the 17th of January 2525, Johnson became the second modern human to ever lay eyes upon a member of the Covenant. A few moments later, and he became the first modern human to kill a member of the Covenant when he and Byrne successfully repulsed a Kigyar boarding party. Despite the humans pursuing and eliminating the Kigyar crew of the vessel, An envoy named Dadab and a Huragok named Lighter Than Sun were able to get to safety in an escape pod. The two managed to get word for the discovery of Harvest and humanity to the Covenant hierarchy on High Charity, and thus soon afterwards, the Covenant cruiser Rapid Conversion arrived in orbit around Harvest. Although the Harvest colonial government attempted to deal with the Covenant peacefully, negotiations soon broke down and became violent after a militiaman of Johnson's platoon was killed by an envoy. The Covenant delegation was driven back to their ship by Johnson and the militia. However, upon returning to their vessel, the captain of the cruiser, the Jiralhane clan chieftain Maccabeus, ordered the attack. Thus began the First Battle of Harvest. Up against far superior weaponry and faced with Covenant dominance of the skies, the order to evacuate Harvest was given. Johnson and the militia were able to draw the Rapid Conversion into a trap and disable it long enough for the bulk of Harvest's populace to escape the planet via space elevators. Harvest was lost to humanity, but 250,000 civilians managed to escape thanks to the efforts of Johnson and the militia. Whilst travelling through slipspace back to the UNSC-controlled space, Johnson and Al Signy became romantically involved. It is unclear as to how long their relationship lasted, however it is possible that they may have gotten married at some point. Just to be clear though, that is merely a possibility and is unconfirmed. In the decades of the Human Covenant War to come, Johnson was able to fight the Covenant and live to tell the tale time and time again. He served in countless campaigns during these years, despite the steady progression of age. Indeed, Johnson would have been nearly 70 years old by the time of the events of the Halo trilogy. It is worth noting that the aging process would have been greatly slowed due to the amount of time he spent in cryosleep between conflicts, and it is also likely that the enhancements he received as part of the Orion project also helped slow the effects of age. Thus, although he had lived 70 years, he may have only been physically 50 years old. Regardless of his age, the UNSC was certainly not going to discharge a veteran soldier at a time when they needed every rifle they could get, and career soldier that he was, Johnson would never have retired on his own accord. So this is why we found Johnson fighting in the defense of Reach in 2552, defending Orbital Station Gamma from the advancing Covenant forces. When the order to retreat was finally given, Johnson and his Marines left Reach on board the UNSC cruiser Pillar of Autumn, the same ship as John 117 and Linda 058. This now brings us up to the events of Halo Combat Evolved. As most will probably be aware, Johnson fought with the Master Chief and the others from the Pillar of Autumn on Halo Installation 04 and was one of the lucky few to escape. Whilst fighting against the Flood, it became apparent that Johnson bore some kind of resistance to the Flood that none of the others possessed. The Flood microspores would enter his body, however they would lay dormant instead of multiplying and taking over his nervous system. Only later explains this seemingly miraculous resistance as being due to his suffering from a condition known as Boron syndrome, a rare mutation which he contracted as a result of overexposure to plasma radiation during the Battle of Paris 4 in 2549. His mutated neural cells were rendered unidentifiable to the Flood spores, and thus protected. During her exploration of classified files in Oni's castle base on Reach, Dr. Catherine Halsey discovered that Johnson did not actually suffer from Boron syndrome. The resistance he possessed was in fact caused by some of the biochemical augmentations that the Orion project had carried out on him. However, Oni was forced to use the Boron syndrome cover story to protect the secrecy of the highly classified Orion project. As no other ex-Orion project members ever came into contact with the Flood, it is unknown as to whether Johnson was merely a freak anomaly, or if one of the operations that Orion carried out was in fact the long-forgotten cure to the Flood infection. Linking up with John 117 following their escape from the exploding Installation 04, Johnson journeyed back with him to Reach, and then later assisted in the daring raid to destroy the Covenant repair and refit station known as the Unyielding Hierophant. For his commendable service fighting the Covenant and the Flood on the Alpha Halo, Johnson was promoted from Staff Sergeant to Sergeant Major. He was also awarded the Colonial Cross, the highest military honour, by Admiral Hood upon returning to Earth at the beginning of Halo 2. Johnson proved instrumental in the winning of the battles on Delta Halo and the Ark, in Halos 2 and 3 respectively. He fought alongside both Chief and the Arbiter, and it is for his actions in these final chapters of the Human Covenant War that he will be most remembered. One of the very last casualties of the war, Johnson was killed right at the end by the Forerunner Monitor 343 Guilty Spark, when he attempted to prematurely activate the replacement Installation 04. His last words?
Send me out with a bang.
So there you have it. Johnson is one of humanity's greatest wartime heroes. Despite decades of active service, he never stopped fighting for humanity, holding true to the promise that he had made to his Aunt Marcille upon his enlistment. Johnson's colourful personality and frequent witticisms made him one of the most popular Halo characters to date. The Chief and Cortana may have a deep emotional story. but Johnson is simply too awesome to not love. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I've been H2Acon, and I'll see you next time on Character Case Files.